Again, everyone. Welcome back to the Fandom Zone podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Charles Skaggs, back in the Fandom Zone, ready to talk more of The Boys Season 2, even more right now, because we've already talked about it. So here at episode 196, I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, wonderful friend, and someone who is very patient putting up with yours truly's nonsense right now, DJ Nick. How you doing, Nick?
Hey, Charles, I'm doing well, getting into the Thanksgiving spirit. Even though we don't celebrate Thanksgiving over here, we're definitely thankful to be here with you today. And I wanted to thank you so much for your heartfelt tweet that you posted a few days ago. It meant a lot to me, and I'm sure it meant a lot to Zan and Jesse, who I believe you name-checked there as well. So thank you very much for that.
Well, you're very welcome, Nick. And being, as you said, Thanksgiving, that I was probably pretty thankful for my wonderful co-hosts like you, Jesse, Zan, of course, who make me sound good somehow, even when I'm doing my usual nonsense. And I really appreciate all of you. And I just wanted to kind of express that right now. It was one of those spur of the moment things that, I really should give these wonderful people their props on Twitter. So,
well, I'm sure I can speak for Zan and Jesse saying it's more than mutual. I'm sure they appreciate. I certainly appreciate you. I'm sure that Jesse and Zan certainly do.
Well, I know I appreciate all of you, and like I said, I wouldn't be doing this without you guys because you guys are so wonderful. All right.
Well, and if Zan and Jesse are listening, definitely want to send them a shout out.
Exactly. So I understand that Zan sometimes listens to the Fandom Zone podcast. Ooh, so nice. Hopefully she's listening. She wasn't listening when it was just Jesse and me, but, now that you're doing the podcast, well, suddenly maybe it's found its way into her microphone earbuds or something.
It's piqued her interest.
Just a little bit, yes. It's the appeal of Nick. This is why we brought him on.
Too kind.
So here at episode 186, like I said, we're going to be talking the Bloody Dolezolf, which you have to say it like that, right? So this was the 6th episode of The Boys Season 2, aired back on September 25th, 2020, written by Anselm Richardson and directed by Sarah Boyd, who's directed for the show before. And this was a pretty interesting episode. Before we get into trivia, there are certain episodes of The Boys that, they're fun and they're innovative and magical, but there's certain episodes that kind of, are more The Boys and kind of give it that little something extra.
Yeah.
And I think this episode is one of those.
Very much so.
What do you think?
There's a lot of character development, I think, in this episode. I mean, or more than anything, you should say a lot of backstory, which enriches the characters that are already very well developed. And I think that was it was great to actually kind of take some time to kind of get to know a little bit more of the behind the scenes of how certain characters got to where they are today.
Yeah, we obviously learn a lot about Boys member Frenchie in this one, including, hey, he's got a first name, Serge.
Yes.
So that's nice, right? We finally get a little bit of background on Frenchie, who's kind of been, not I want to say overlooked, I guess, but maybe just more marginalized from time to time. Not one of the major players because we're obviously focusing on all the drama between Butcher and Starlight and Huey and all that. Some of the other members kind of get lost in the shuffle from time to time.
True. I'm glad that we actually found out that he was christened Serge and not Frenchie. Because, folks give kids the weirdest names. I mean, you can even check with Frank Zappa. As much as I love Frank Zappa, he gave his kids some really weird names.
You mean like Moon Unit, perhaps? Yeah.
Just going there. So, hey, I would not be surprised if somebody christened their kid Frenchie. But yes, Serge. Which
Valley girl. She's a valley girl.
Yes.
Oh, my God. No.
And you know what? Speaking of Frank Zappa, this might actually tie in nicely with when we get to a certain character later on. But I'm going to keep that here for now, Charles.
All right. Sounds good. That's a good tease.
But what I wanted to say was Serge made me think of Le Beau Serge, which is actually a great Truffaut film. I'm actually a big fan of the New Wave, or Nouvelle Vague, as they say in French. So it made me think of that. I thought it was nice. Serge is a nice name.
You know, look at Nick parlaying his Francais a little bit here.
Well, 5 years of French at school have to pay off, I kind of think. You know, my parents would kind of, beat me black and blue. Like, you haven't learned a lick of French in 5 years of school,
Well, it's good. At least we gave you that platform to put that to good use. That's good.
Thank you, John.
All right. So a little bit of trivia before we get started into our topics. The Bloody Doors-Off title comes from The Boys issues 66 through 71, which was the final major storyline from The Boys. And as we've talked about here on the podcast, that it's another episode title taken from a storyline. And I'm holding in my hands here
Very nice.
the volume 12 of the original Boys trade paperback series. So this story, because of it's the culmination of a lot of subplots and a lot of other storylines that preceded it, I can't really talk about it because it would be a massive spoiler what happens in this. You know, The Boys only ran 72 issues. This covers 66 through 71.
Oh, yes.
So, needless to say, this is the climax of the series.
So I'm going to have to burn the midnight oil to get there fast. Is that what you're saying, Charles? Since I just started.
Probably. And probably even more so once I kind of tease that, well, hey, this just happens to be the final meeting between Butcher and Huey. And I'm going to just leave it there.
Goodbye social life for me. Granted, we didn't get much of a social life under COVID, but still, that small smidgen of social life is gone.
Well, you got anything else better to do in lockdown? I don't think so.
This time and place, definitely not. So I could probably just, I'll have to let Rachel and Zan know, not podcasting for a while, reading The Boys. See you later.
There you go. Well, you have to do Fandom Zone. That's the only requirement I ask. All right. So, yeah, you definitely want to check that out. But I don't want to spoil it. If you're someone that is familiar with the storyline, you know what I'm going to say, so there's no point in me spoiling it all over again. But if you're someone who hasn't read the comics, you don't want to know. You want to be able to appreciate that moment. So I hope you don't go on the internet and look this up because, for one thing, they may not even follow it because sometimes they don't follow the comics here on The Boys.
Very true.
So it may not even be what actually happened in the books. So we'll see what happens. But the chance that it is, you don't want it spoiled.
Exactly. You don't want to ruin your reading experiences. I don't want my reading experience ruined. I want to see what happens.
There you go. And also, the Bloody Doors-Off was a reference to, and I'm sure Nick knows this because, hey, we've already talked about it before, of a 1969 comedy film, The Italian Job. So this is the original version of the film. And after seeing his colleague detonate an explosive that destroys an entire van, Charlie Croker, a character played by the great Michael Caine.
Yes, indeed. Fantastic.
Known, of course, to Batman fans as Alfred Pennyworth in the Christopher Nolan Batman films.
Or pretty much any Nolan movie, I guess.
or as Austin Powers' dad, or Negligent Dad, as it turns out.
And Jaws, of course, for you Jaws fans.
There you go. Or Inception.
Yeah.
You had, or any other Christopher Nolan movie because he's like his go-to actor, right?
That's right, yeah.
So anyway, Charlie Croker states in the movie, you're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off in regards to that van. Yeah. So that's where the title comes from. And apparently Garth Ennis, it was a line that really resonated with Garth Ennis. And so essentially the storyline from the comics was like, well, you're only supposed to blow up a little bit and you end up blowing the whole thing up. So it's a good metaphor, I think. Now, also from the comics, if you're wondering about a certain character that gets introduced in this story, this episode, Love Sausage. Mm-hmm. Yes, we're going to be talking more Love Sausage. In the comics, he's a character named Vasily Voroshinkin, a Russian ex-cop, ex-tank commander, ex-superhero, communist and also an owner of a bar in Moscow who has a penchant for a beverage made from brake fluid that he somehow passes off as vodka.
So yes, you're Russian moonshiner, basically.
Basically. So he's essentially he's a very gregarious, outgoing character in the comics. He gets along with the boys, very friendly, kind of like this big galoot, to use an American term. And his powers in the comics are that he appears to be super strong and durable, but apparently because of, shall we say, his endowment.
Yes, exactly. Being well endowed.
Yeah. He's got a pretty large package, shall we say, that he's carrying. So he can't run straight whenever he's aroused. And apparently he says large female breasts are his kryptonite.
Curious.
So, yeah. So a very fun character in the comics, but very different here in this episode. And we'll talk more about that when we talk more love sausage. Yes, it's always fun to say love sausage.
Yes, and that's actually where, as I said, my Frank Zappa reference will come into play, Charles.
Okay, very cool, very cool. All right, so we have 4 topics today. Topic number 1, let's talk Frenchie flashbacks.
Okay.
Because we get a series of flashbacks in this episode that thankfully relate to the main story, as good flashbacks should. And we learn a lot more about Frenchie in the process, like I said, including his first name, Serge. Yeah. So we probably should run these down, I'm guessing, so we can talk about them, because it kind of covers a certain period leading up to the present day, where we kind of find out essentially how Frenchie hooked up with the original incarnation of the boys, and how he met Grace Mallory and so on, and the others. So when we start off this episode, we have a flashback to 8 years ago, where we have Frenchie in his apartment getting high, shock, right? While his mates and possibly fellow members of a certain menage a trois,
nicely put, Charles, yes,
Cherie and Jay look on, and Frenchie's going on in a very Tarantino-esque way about the Golden Girls.
Yes.
And talking about that kept him going while he was on the streets. So, I take it, Nick, that you appreciated this little kind of pop culture reference, that pop culture obsession that Frenchie has for this, shall we say, standard network television sitcom.
Yes. You know what, Charles? I've seen probably 1 episode of Golden Girls, pretty much. I mean, my grandma was a big fan of it at the time, but I only actually kind of got to see 1 episode. But yes, I did kind of like, if you will, the Tarantino nod, which was kind of fun. The fact that it kept him going while he was on the streets. And you think to yourself, 90s American television. I'm sure there are other things on as well aside from Golden Girls. And I'm sure you have a remote, you can switch the channels.
Like Twin Peaks, perhaps? Yes. That might be what you're hinting at, I'm guessing.
Good catch there. And actually, but I loved it. And I think, it was kind of a Tarantino meets Danny Boyle, because once again, my train spotting references come in here, and eventually I hope we will watch it. And we will have to talk, you and I maybe, not on the podcast, we'll have to talk about your viewing experience of train spotting. But
I know it's on my list. I'm gonna get to it. I swear. I promise.
I will hold you to that.
All right. But you do that.
But yes, it was kind of a Danny Boyle meets Tarantino, because obviously these folks are doing nothing all day but getting high. I'm like, how do they make their income to buy the drugs and stuff? Are they just robbing banks and getting high?
Well, probably dealing as well, I'm guessing. On the side.
Yeah. Because I guess that's what we gathered is Frenchie kind of made his way as a pusher and dealer on the streets and to get where he was at. Because it seems like actually a pretty nice apartment. I mean, okay, it's small, but it seems like a decent apartment. But yeah, and I don't think we've ever seen Frenchie sober, to be honest. I wonder if he's constantly high. I think I'm high. Yeah.
Oh, see, now I have to do this because you brought that up. Hold on. I got to go to the soundboard. I think I'm high. There you go. Just for you, Nick.
Thank you. I had to bring that up. But
All right.
yes, do you think we actually have ever seen? I think aside from his interrogation, I don't think Frenchie's ever really sober.
It's hard to say because he's so outgoing. So if he isn't high, I mean, he might be just a naturally kind of upbeat person.
Yeah.
But if he is high constantly, that's going to be one hell of a come down, right? Eventually,
That's going to hurt.
yeah, it's gonna be pretty brutal. And whenever he ends up going through withdrawal, but for right now, he seems to be, at least he's a high functioning addict, I guess.
Yes, that's true. And of course, we get Jay, which you mentioned, and obviously we don't see him in present day. So yeah, something must have happened to this guy, which is probably why he's not around no more.
Yep, but apparently it doesn't happen in this episode, as we find out.
That's right.
So we'll talk more about that here in a minute. So that's kind of like our introduction, continuity-wise, to Frenchie. We pick up a little bit later, not sure exactly how far later, but in another flashback, we have Grace Mallory coming to interrogate Frenchie, who has been arrested and is sitting in a police station.
Yeah. Which cuts actually very well from the scene where Frenchie's about to break in. They're about to break into the institute, and Frenchie's like, I never get caught. Flashback to him in cuffs.
Yep. So I guess that was a complete lie, needless to say. So she confronts him about his armed robbery charges because, well, hey, they decided, well, we want to go rob a bank. Who wants to rob a bank, right? So it's a very almost Tarantino-esque kind of thing that they went off to rob a bank. And he got busted, and so now he's facing 25 years in the slammer in prison. But Grace, as it turns out, is very impressed with Frenchie's engineering ability to counter a soup's power. Yeah. And so she offers him a way out of this. She says, well, you could either do 25 in the slammer, or you could work for me. And Frenchie doesn't really go for that at first. He denies, her offer, refuses it. So she makes him another one, and she threatens to lock up his friends, Cherie and Jay, at a supermax security prison unless he works for her. And this one, he also kind of resists at first, but ultimately he cares about his friends and he goes along with it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the deal breaker is, they're going to be keeping company with folks like the Aryan Brotherhood and folks of this nature. I'm like, yes, Jay would probably not do well in the company of the Aryan Brotherhood. And Cherie, you think to yourself, being the gorgeous woman that she is, I wonder, she would probably be, I'm sure she can defend herself, but yeah, I don't see her having a good time with those kind of people either.
No, orange is the new black, as they say.
That's right. She's going to meet up with the Piper of the situation.
Yeah, exactly. So we pick up a little bit later, let's say 5 years ago now, so sometime 3 years after this, doing the math, we see Mother's Milk showing Frenchie an engagement ring, telling him that he and his girlfriend are getting engaged. He plans to propose. And so Grace is there. So we kind of see the first incarnation of the boys that took place, the original team, I guess, before this series started.
Yeah, because I actually have the two things to say about this. First off, I'm so glad that Butcher changed his hairstyle as time went on, because there with the kind of licked cow look, it seemed like a cow would give him a lick. It's like all back. I was like, that don't suit you, Butcher. He looks much better now. Secondly, being of the, part of the Latin culture, because
you like him with a little bit of more bedhead, is what you're telling me.
Well, yeah, no, because I like kind of the spiky kind of look. I suppose, because you
spiky.
You have going on Charles. I used to do my hair up the way that Butcher has it now when I was a drummer in a band. I used to have hairspray.
I didn't know you were a drummer.
Yes, indeedy. I used to be a drummer.
I used to play the drums too, a little
Oh,
bit.
really?
Little bit.
Very cool. I mean, yeah, I was in a glam rock band for a couple of years, and so I
Nice.
had the hairspray and the eyeliner and everything. There are actually some very embarrassing pictures on Facebook of me in my hair metal days. So,
And now I need to see those pictures.
well, they're there for the world to see. But yeah, so I kind of had the Billy Butcher thing going on to a certain extent. I mean, granted, we're talking Karl Urban, talking DJ Nick. There's like no, but that's
It's pretty close. It's pretty close.
but that said, thank you, Charles. I see that as a very big compliment. But that said, it was just great to kind of get to see this. And as I said, being of the Latin persuasion, obviously being Italian, the French and the Spanish in Europe are the three big Latin cultures.
Mm-hmm.
An Italian would have exactly the same reaction, high or not, to the news of your buddy getting married. It's like, oh, big hugs, everybody's going to party, and we're planning the stag party and everything else. That's why I could so relate to Frenchie in that moment, and I loved it.
And that's one of the things I find interesting about his character. He's so likable.
Oh, yes, he's amazing.
Even if when we talked about this, that he hangs out with, shall we say, unsavory characters.
Very much so, yes. The worst of the worst.
The worst of the worst. These undesirables, these ne'er-do-wells, take your pick, however you want to describe them. But he seems a little bit more of an idealist, a little bit. That he has this very upbeat personality. He seems like he wants the best for the world.
And for those around him, he genuinely cares for people.
Yeah, and so it's kind of interesting, this character, and it's great that we're finally learning more about him.
True.
In these flashbacks, much needed in my opinion. So while all of this is going on, a character named Lamplighter shows up, and Lamplighter is played by Shawn Ashmore, who may be slightly familiar to X-Men movie fans as Iceman.
And, of course, for you fans of The Following as well, he did a great job in that, Charles. I'm a huge fan of that. Are you a fan of The Following?
I am not a fan of The Following, but my mother-in-law is a huge fan of The Following because she is a huge fan of Kevin Bacon. Oh. And so, shall we say, slightly fanatically obsessed with Kevin Bacon.
Well, hey, I can't blame her. He is
much to the chagrin of my wife, Lori.
Well, I can't blame him. I mean, he's apparently the biggest hero in the MCU, or so they tell me.
So we hear, yeah, exactly. So Lamplighter shows up, and I find it interesting that Shawn Ashmore, after playing Iceman, is now kind of playing a more Pyro-esque character.
Nice, very well played there, Charles.
Right?
Like that. Yep.
So, with the whole lighter and everything. So Lamplighter in this, I guess he shows up in costume. So he's got like this torch going, like a very almost druidic.
Yeah, medieval, dark ages.
Medieval kind of, that's a great description. Torch that he's carrying in this leather hooded robe, like he's something out of Arrow, perhaps.
Yes, I was expecting him to say, "You have failed this city."
Yeah, pretty much, right?
Or have a voice modulator.
And Felicity nattering in his ear, I guess. So Grace talks to Lamplighter, and apparently she's trying to threaten him for some reason that we don't really know about. That apparently she's trying to arrange that he's a member of the Seven, and that he's apparently going to tell Grace and the boys everything that's going on at the tower. Yeah. And he's seemingly she's threatening him with some photos, so apparently some blackmail photos. Now, being suspicious, Mallory orders Frenchie to follow Lamplighter after he leaves, and Frenchie agrees to do that and races after him. And then the scene kind of cuts. Yes. And we kind of shift back to the present day, where we find out some more details about what happened, what transpired after that. And apparently it's caused a lot of animosity between Frenchie and Grace as a result.
Yes, which was actually alluded to, I believe, in season 1, because I believe Frenchie brought up the Lamplighter story, saying, this is going to be Lamplighter all over again, and so it teased it so much. It's like, when do we get to find out more about this Lamplighter character? And Charles, I believe you mentioned that Lamplighter is actually not present in the comics.
Yeah, it's interesting that Lamplighter, he's more of a character that I would probably describe as he's more of a frame of reference than an actual character in the comics. People mention him, mention things that he's done, but we only get to see him here and there. Very, very little in the comics.
So his presence is felt like a Waiting for Godot, or say even Rebecca in the Hitchcock film Rebecca.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. I think that's a great comparison. Seriously, because he just seems like it's people talk more about him than actually to him in the series.
So you feel the presence, but you don't see him, if you will.
Right.
Gotcha.
We kind of feel more of the effects of things that he's done. More than actually seeing him do those things. So we pick up with another flashback where we see Cherie calling Frenchie, telling him that Jay is dying from, you guessed it, an overdose.
Of course. What else?
Yep. So Frenchie, who, as we remember, is supposed to be following Lamplighter, instead ditches the assignment and goes to be with his friends.
Yeah.
So he chooses his friends over his commitment to the boys.
Once again, a confirmation of his heart that is in the right place.
Exactly. So, which kind of shows you a little bit, though, of a good person that Frenchie is. Yeah. That he's more loyal to people than causes.
Yeah.
Which is good. But apparently, so he goes to help revive Jay. And we find out that apparently that because he was with Jay instead of Lamplighter, Lamplighter that night apparently burned a bunch of kids. Mm-hmm. And the whole thing went sideways as a result, creating that animosity because Frenchie wasn't there to either, one, stop it, or two, at least report about what was going on about it.
Yeah, and Charles, I obviously, I know addiction is a terrible thing and it can lead to terrible things, but it's almost adds an insult to injury after Frenchie has revived him with the adrenaline, because of course any good drug then has adrenaline.
Yep.
But
looking at you, Pulp Fiction.
Exactly. Or once again, train spotting. But what I think is to add insult to injuries, we find out that Jay then died 3 months later of an overdose, which kind of adds, as I said, the insult to injury situation when he could have, been elsewhere. And apparently it's been haunting Frenchie ever since. And it's
he made a good decision, but ultimately it was a kind of a futile result. And because of that, it's caused this strain their relationship with Grace and caused that friction now that the team and especially Frenchie is having to deal with in the present day.
But when Frenchie has revived Jay and is about to walk out the door saying, I'll be back soon and stuff, were you cool with what Frenchie did at that point? When he said to Cherie and Jay, I'm out of here, I've got stuff to do, or were you more in Cherie's ballpark saying he should have stayed?
That's a good question, really. I'm more inclined to say that he probably did the right thing. Now, obviously, that's causing some ramifications down the road, but I think he did the right thing.
And you're thinking, Cherie, it must be a responsible adult. I mean, I don't know how high she is at that point either. So,
well, Cherie could watch Jay as easily as Frenchie could.
That's why I don't, as much as I know they're best friends, but I'm thinking, he's like, I'm leaving him I'm not leaving him alone. I'm leaving him with Cherie, so I can kind of go about my business. It's not that I don't care. I'm not leaving Jay to die. There's somebody watching over him. So that was I was just wondering, because I'm sure there are people like us who are talking about this who are like, he shouldn't have gone, or he should have stayed. It's one of those. It is a puzzler, if you will, or shall we say, it's a conversation piece within the episode.
Well, if any listeners out there listening to our podcast, and thank you for doing so, if you got an opinion on this, why don't you write to us? And we'll tell you how to do that later after we finish our discussion. So stay tuned, right? Because we'd like to know your thoughts on this one.
We certainly do.
All right. Anything else about Frenchie before we move on?
I think we're pretty much good with that. I just love the fact we got some more bones to this character that is already so loved on the show. And flashbacks done right, Charles. Unlike, we're looking at you, Arrow. We're just
right. Arrow is probably the worst.
Filler episode after filler episode.
Arrow is probably the worst offender of this, at least in recent memory, because there were so many flashbacks that were so unnecessary in that show and didn't relate to the present day at all.
You're like, this is furthering the plot. How?
Yeah. It was more like the case, and I know we're digressing a little bit, but it was more of a case where they, I want to say that it's almost like they were obligatory flashbacks, that they felt they had to do a flashback whether it mattered or not. Because that was their gimmick.
It's like, oh yeah, we're on the flashback trend. More flashbacks, yay!
Yay! Right? Yeah. No. And we see how that worked out, right? Yes. All right. So let's move on. Topic number 2. Let's talk about the other members of the boys, including Frenchie, and their encounter with Lamplighter in the present day at the Sage Grove Center, and also running into a character by the name of Love Sausage. Because apparently the team's mission in this is to, after getting some intel from Starlight, that Stormfront's laptop has a bunch of emails between her and Stan Edgar about this facility, the Sage Grove Center, and specifically talking about how they're close to a breakthrough, whatever that is. The team decides, well, maybe we need to go look at this place. Maybe we need to check it out. Yeah. So they kind of stage an op to break into the facility and try to get some information and also retrieve anything relevant, important, potentially of a blackmail nature, I'm guessing. Mm-hmm. And that could be used to expose their activities. So they stage this op to break in, and and it's interesting because the boys do this with Starlight's help. Yeah. So Starlight kind of officially joins the team almost. Yeah. Which is kind of interesting because obviously she's still a member of the Seven.
Yeah, this is her first, shall we say, assignment on Team Boys, if you will.
So what did you, now that I'm thinking about it, what did you make of that? I mean, we're going to talk more about Starlight later in our third topic, but I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about her interaction with the boys breaking into this facility.
It was kind of like seeing Huey for the second time, because she is very much in inverted commas, a greenhorn when it comes to stuff that the boys do. Right. And because obviously Starlight and Huey are very similar in that regards. Never killed anybody, clean living, regular stuff, nothing major, etc. And
which is probably why they got on with each other.
No surprise, exactly. I mean, right. Opposites attract, but also if you have similar traits, that will attract too, of course. But yes. But it was. In fact, I was so curious to see how is the newbie going to fit in with these rough and rugged characters who have flirted with death and disaster on multiple occasions. So you think to yourself, how's this going to play out?
And Starlight having this Christian background, whether she would be comfortable doing the, shall we say, slightly immoral activities a little bit.
And here's the thing, they're like, okay, Starlight, we've got a soup on our side. She's going to help us out. But here's the thing, Charles. They use her to burn through the gate, if you will, or the
fence.
The fence, thank you. And
you're welcome.
And here's the thing, you see the scorch marks. Aren't people going to say there's no way it's not it happened supernaturally?
You would think, unless it looked like perhaps a acetylene torch or something.
Yeah, I
But
mean, unless it's like, oh, this was done by a blowtorch. I mean,
yeah,
I don't see that, but it's like, be
you would think they
discreet,
would figure it out, is what you're
be
saying.
discreet, and everything else is like, that is not very discreet. But that's just me. But other than that, it was
And
interesting.
also, you have to think that, hey, there are cameras all over this facility, right?
That's right. It's like you're not blanking out anything. So somebody must have caught something on tape.
You would think. You would think.
Yes, that's
Right?
right. But that aside, it was interesting to see because we know how Butcher feels about soups. And we will
Yes.
talk about this as we progress in this review. But
Yeah, I think that kind of deserves its own segment. The confrontation, because there's kind of a back and forth confrontation throughout the episode between
yes.
Starlight and Butcher.
And you wisely decided to make that a topic, in fact, because I think it definitely deserves talking about. But yeah, and then they get to they're able to enter, and I don't know, I got this kind of Auschwitz vibe, Charles. I mean, I went to that immediately because like
Little
experiments.
Joseph of Mengele thing going on,
Yes,
perhaps?
the Angel of Death, looking at the Angel of Death for sure, because the fact of these experiments on people, burning the evidence. I'm like, yeah.
Eugenics,
Yes.
perhaps?
And
Yeah.
also I went to MK Ultra as well for the super soldiers, So I was like, it's MK Ultra meets.
I love that you know that.
Well, I actually got it from the band, from MK Ultra, the rock band. And I was like,
That's cool.
where'd they get their name from?
And now you know.
Oh, yeah. And yeah, so it was kind of like super soldier experiments meets Nazi death camps. That's the way I kind of perceived it. I mean, what did you make of that whole sort of
Probably along the lines of, well, it's the Red Skull's super soldier program.
Nice. Yeah, exactly. Yes. What did you make of that whole sort of?
Well, I think it's very interesting because this facility, we find out that these are kind of adults that were given Compound V,
Yep.
not given it to them as children. So as a result, some of them have very untraditional powers, or they're either not in control of their powers, or they're just psychologically unfit to be used as super soldiers or superheroes by Vought. So consequently, they're kind of just kept away, hidden away from the world here. They're locked away in a lot of places.
And those unfit are literally burnt.
Right. And those that are there are kind of also being used as part of it. The continuing experiments, as we find out, to refine Compound V and develop it so that it'd be better used by Vought to make more super soldiers, superheroes.
And apparently supervising all this is none other than Stormfront.
Right, which should raise like every red flag you have imaginable,
exactly.
Right?
If you thought she was a Nazi.
Yeah, pretty much, right. So now she's getting her Mengele on, and it's not good, needless to say. So apparently she's the one kind of connecting, working with Lamplighter. Lamplighter is kind of like the on-site person overseeing this program, which is why he's no longer officially a member of the Seven. As we find out, he's now in charge of this facility.
And in fact, because I believe, Starlight took his place. And they're two characters with similar powers, because I suppose marketing-wise, they have to have the guy or the girl that has the fire powers or the light powers.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So I suppose that's why she fit in and took over from Lamplighter.
Yeah, it's that whole Human Torch thing, maybe, or Starfire, if you will, a little bit.
I think so too.
From a marketing standpoint, yeah, it probably works pretty well. So the team breaks in, and they run afoul of assorted prisoners.
Oh, yes.
Including, this one prisoner, Cindy, who breaks out of her cell. And apparently she can just completely crush things with her mind.
Yeah, talk about those. Those are killer telekinetic powers. That's telekinesis to the nth degree.
Right. So it's kind of like the harsher use of telekinetic powers, right? This isn't just like moving a coffee cup across the room. This is more like, well, hey, I'll just take this guard here and I'm going to just crush his head.
Yeah, just clench my fist, boom, he's
Crunch.
all over the place.
Pretty much, spooge. And so yeah, and there's a whole big sequence where Cindy gets out a little bit and Lamplighter's trying to deal with her and pleads with Cindy to let him live. While the boys, meanwhile, try to convince Cindy that, well, hey, we're on your side. You should be working with us, and we'll get you out of here. But Cindy's like not sure whom to believe.
But also she sees the suits as well, because obviously they are putting costumes to blend in with the staff, and
right.
he's like, you dress, because she has obviously beef with Lamplighter. And he's like, oh, you say you're not his friends, but you're dressed like him. And so she obviously, I guess, makes a psychological connection of suits bad. I don't like these people. And that's why she probably turns on him.
Yeah, she ends up letting the other suit prisoners out. And wacky chaos ensues as the whole place goes into lockdown mode.
And I'm actually surprised this character was invented for the TV show. I know she is not in the comics. She's actually...
this is something different, yeah.
And I know that apparently playing her is like the supervisor of the stunt crew, because she's a stunt woman, apparently.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Because I was actually reading a little bit of notes about this, and apparently I think she's like the supervising stunt woman in the show. And so so they got her to play this character, and she does so well. I really like this. I don't know why, Charles. Maybe it's the shaved head, but it made me think of Hammerhead. It made me think of Hammerhead with powers.
You know, that kind of takes us to our Doom Patrol discussion days, doesn't it? Yes,
it does.
On Titan Talk. So,
exactly.
So if you want more, check out Titan Talk, the Titans podcast. All right.
Yeah.
So they come across later an acid vomiting patient who knocks Lamplighter down, almost melting his face. But Kimiko saves Lamplighter from the patient. So he's like, well, okay, I guess I'll go along with you and get you that access code to get out of here. And so we have another patient pleading with Butcher and Starlight not to let him get hurt. And, essentially this whole episode turns into a base under siege episode.
That's right.
Where we have the characters... you remember, keep in mind, they're still on mission here. They're trying to get information on the facility. So they end up going to like this security room or something to get get some records or something from there. I can't remember exactly what. And meanwhile, one of the things that goes on as they're kind of locked away, they end up having this conversation, Lamplighter and Frenchie, about the event that happened in the past. And Lamplighter tells Frenchie that, well, hey, I didn't know that there were kids in the bed when I set it on fire.
Yes, because...
I was intending to burn Grace Mallory, not the kids. Yeah. And so Lamplighter calls Frenchie out and says, well, you could have stopped me since you were supposedly following me that night, right? And that's where we find out that, no, he was somewhere else.
Yeah.
Taking care of Jay.
Yeah, and that's when also he then reveals to people like Mother's Milk that that's where he was, and then the fact that also that Jay then died of overdose a couple of months later, and MM's like, why didn't you tell us? It wasn't your kind of cross to bear. It wasn't almost your fault. And they have that kind of reveal that even, regardless of how long Frenchie and MM have known each other, there's still a lot of things that they don't know about each other, which is always an interesting point.
Yeah, I mean, it's someone they've been obviously working together closely for years.
Yeah.
But they still have secrets they keep from one another.
Yeah, which was an interesting one, yeah.
Yeah, it is. So, being the boys, being this particular TV show, things take an interesting turn.
I know where you're going.
Nick knows exactly where I'm going with this. So, suddenly, as they're locked away in this room, a giant, elongated penis breaks through a window and proceeds to choke Mother's Milk.
Oh, Lord.
So I immediately felt horrible for Mother's Milk that this is happening to him.
Yeah.
And then we find out, this is essentially the boys' TV version of Love Sausage. So, like I said, completely different version. Because back in the comics, Love Sausage may have had, shall we say, certain endowments, but did not have an elongated penis that was stretchable, kind of like Mr. Fantastic's or Elongated Man's or Plastic Man's.
Hey, they went the extra mile, literally.
Right. This wasn't Plastic Dick, okay? Hashtag Plastic Dick.
Yes. That in here is where my Frank Zappa reference comes into play, Charles, because there is a song from Frank Zappa, which is actually in Italian called Tengo una minchia tanta, which means I have a big penis, to put it cleanly. So yes, Frank Zappa even wrote songs in Italian. Well, I guess, as a callback to his Italian heritage. But yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So you couldn't sing that for us, could you?
No, I could not. I mean, but apart from that, it's all recited. Basically, it's him going on for hours, like, Tengo una minchia tanta, and all this kind of thing.
Oh, interesting. All right. Well,
great song.
I guess everybody, you can look that up on the YouTubes and check that out later.
A friend of mine was actually pulled over while listening to that song.
So I have to ask, what was your reaction to this moment where a giant penis just breaks through the window? For one, a penis breaking through a window, and then two, trying to strangle Mother's Milk.
Okay.
Who is a very big, powerful dude.
Okay, I have to be honest. I am not a fan of kind of puerile humor, as I've also mentioned on Next Stop Everywhere, fart jokes and what have you. But, and I've actually seen stuff this crazy on Scary Movie, if folks will recall. A movie that I absolutely hate, which I was kind of forced to watch in a drunk stupor with folks one evening at a party. And
the parody movie of Scream, by the way.
That's right.
Other horror movies.
And there is, in fact, a scene where a penis goes all over the place. And so I'm like, okay, this is Scary Movie all over again. So, you know what, Charles? I just rolled with it. I just said, thank the Lord it's not breast milk. I guess, thank God for small mercies, right?
Well, that's true. This episode, we don't get a breast milk reference.
So I was actually happy. I'm like, okay, bring on the elongated penis. It's fine with me,
There you go.
As ridiculous as it might be, but yeah, it's the boys,
Yeah, exactly.
They top themselves.
So, thankfully, Kimiko pushes through the door, knocks out Love Sausage with a pair of brass knuckles.
Yes.
So, and saves the day. Saves MM. So that's good, right? So we find out that apparently after all this, after they escape the facility, Grace confronts Frenchie. And he tells her that, well, hey, I knew that I wasn't welcome at the funeral. But she doesn't care about that at all. All she wants is Lamplighter.
Yes.
They've got Lamplighter, that's all she's focused on, who is apparently in the back of an ambulance. Grace draws a gun on him. And Lamplighter suggests that they both be like, let's just get this over with. Let's just,
he's literally like, put me out of my misery.
Right, because they've been burdened by this for so long.
No pun intended.
Exactly, yeah, I see what you say there, right? So, she'd be doing him a favor, like you said. Now, interestingly, Frenchie speaks up at this moment and begs for Lamplighter's life. Saying it won't help Grace and she'll just be ending Lamplighter's torment, which causes Grace to lower her gun and wondering what Frenchie proposes to do with Lamplighter now instead of killing him. So what did you make of Frenchie standing up for Lamplighter?
Well, I can see both arguments because Frenchie, after I suppose having talked to Lamplighter, because he immediately kind of labeled him as a child killer, because of the fact that he'd burnt these kids. But, then Lamplighter goes out saying, I didn't realize they were kids. Granted, that does not make you any less of a murderer of innocent people, be it adults or children. Of course, you kill children, it's even worse. But I think Frenchie has somewhat understood that he killed these, because I think what irks Frenchie, or what angers him so, is that he killed children, and he thought he did this almost out of pleasure because he knows people like Homelander who won't,
Right.
think twice about killing kids if they're in the way. And so I can see why he would stand up for him. And I suppose maybe it could be the argument of what are you going to get if you've killed him? What satisfaction is it going to give you?
Right.
That you've killed the guy. You killed him. Is it going to bring your kids back? The answer is no. But I think that's the argument he's trying to make is, do you lower yourself to the level of the executioner, of the murderer of your people? Granted, Charles, it's a very open-ended discussion, but
again, it's also Frenchie being the idealist here.
Yes.
He sees an alternate solution here. He's not just looking for revenge, interestingly enough.
No, exactly. It's like, we can...
Because he could have turned turned a blind eye and let Grace kill him.
Yeah,
but he didn't.
I think maybe, or as you said, yes, or maybe being pragmatic about it, saying, we could use a chap like this in the grander scheme of things. So it could be both the idealism of you're lowering yourself to the level of the murderer of your family, to this guy has potential, let's use him for other things to get revenge on the system, if you will.
See, got to listen to the constantly high Frenchman, right?
Of course.
He's the guy with the good advice, apparently. Yeah.
Well, it's very Shakespearean. The fool is the one who tells the truth, I guess, to use Hamlet.
There you go. Nice. Very nice reference. Look at Nick being all sophisticated here with the Shakespearean reference. Interesting. All right. So, anything else about this topic before we move on?
And I thought it was, and apart from the fact I was so happy to see Shawn Ashmore again, because he is a brilliant actor no matter what he does. And I remember at the time going, oh my God, it's Shawn Ashmore. And so I was so happy to see him again. So no, I'm pretty much talked out on this one, unless you had anything else, Charles.
No, I don't. I don't. All right, so let's move on. Topic number 3, and we kind of teased this a little bit already, Starlight and Butcher, which I thought, we talked about, deserved its own segment.
Certainly does.
Because, now, obviously, these are complete opposite personalities here, Starlight and Butcher. And when Starlight shows up at the beginning of this episode, when she first starts hanging out with the boys in this episode, she goes to their safe house. And knowing that she's being tracked, Frenchie cuts out the tracking chip out of her neck as Huey's looking on.
Just like, yeah.
And Huey and Annie are trying to pass themselves off like, well, we're just friends now. And Frenchie's not buying it one whit. And he's, working with this cutter Huey's, trying to keep the bleeding down until he finally gets the chip out.
Not to mention, Huey can't play it down too much because Starlight's right there. Like, we're just friends. Oh, no, I love her. No,
yeah.
Platonic. No.
Yeah. And it's typical Huey. He's very uncool about it. And obviously, he still is showing deep feelings for her at this point. And I don't think that's going to change. But while all of this is going on, Butcher is kind of giving the side eye from across the room and making comments here and there to the point where Starlight confronts Butcher about, she starts an argument with him about asking why does he hate soups so much. And she really gets on his nerves. She tries to push his buttons, really. She tries to compare him to Homelander. Before they can kind of continue this discussion, they get interrupted when Stormfront shows up at the facility.
It seems like she almost wants to get a rise out of him.
Right.
I don't know if that's her intention, but it seems like she's trying to get a rise out of him.
Well, Starlight has this very jaded perception of Butcher, knowing how Butcher has treated Huey.
Yeah.
And Butcher, meanwhile, doesn't like Starlight because, 1, she's a soup, and 2, because she's involved with Huey.
Yeah.
So there's this butting of heads between these two. And it's not until later in the episode where after Huey gets injured severely, they're desperate to get him to a hospital.
Yes.
So they hail down this car to get help for Huey. And the man inside the car gets out, threatens Butcher with a gun, which, big mistake, right?
Yeah.
And instead of Butcher doing something about it, Starlight uses her powers to push him away, but accidentally kills him in the process.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a big moment for her, that she's accidentally caused this human's death.
She's lost her virginity, if you will, when it comes to the killing thing. Yeah, I have to use that reference, Charles, because I mean it's what I know. That's what came to mind. It just like Huey in season 1.
Right. Well, or to use a certain title from the first Boys major storyline, she kind of lost her cherry when it comes to killing.
That's
shall
right.
we say?
That's right. And so it's like, yeah, she's lost her virginity, and no surprise, her reaction is similar, if you will, to Huey's. Granted, okay, Huey's just like in total shock. I think she's masking her. I mean, initially she says, in the car, I would have cried. Had it been some time ago, I probably would have broken into tears. She seems to internalize that moment.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think by this point, she's, after being sexually assaulted by the Deep,
and knowing what she knows about the Seven.
knowing what she knows, being confronted by and threatened by Homelander, that she's lost a lot of her naivete.
It's almost like another day at the office for her, almost.
Right. And interestingly, and it almost seems, and this is something that kind of gets addressed in this episode, that in a weird way, Butcher and Annie kind of bond with one another because they kind of find common ground here.
Talking about Huey.
And in a lot of ways, they're a lot alike, as it turns out.
True. And even though initially Starlight points out that Homelander and Butcher are not so different, she says what has been on the minds of a lot of us viewers is you and Homelander are not so different.
Kind of two sides of the same coin.
It's curious that they seem to be bonding over Huey, because obviously discussing the little anecdotes about the fact that Huey uses children's shampoo, or that he uses Axe. And hey, if she says that's what Vin Diesel smells like, I mean, tell Vin Diesel that he uses Axe and he's terrible. I mean, I wouldn't muster up the courage to tell Vin Diesel he uses a bad deodorant. Seriously.
Right.
But
maybe you could email him from a distance. I don't know.
It's like, Axe sucks, Vin Diesel.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of generally known that Axe sucks, but yeah. Sorry, Axe, don't sue us. So, but it's kind of weird because they bond and they kind of come to this agreement that, well, neither of them is good enough for Huey.
Yeah, because they see Huey is the good person in the presence.
Yeah, and obviously we talked in our previous episode, we talked that Butcher has an affinity for Huey because he's kind of like his brother.
Yeah, that's right.
And Annie feels that, she, because of her experiences, maybe she doesn't deserve to be with Huey.
Yeah. Even though she was just as noble, and I think still is just as noble as Huey, if you will. But she feels, I think, now that she's almost tainted, having experienced what she experienced with the Seven, and having just recently killed somebody for the first time, she maybe almost feels tainted compared to Huey. Granted, Huey has actually killed people himself, as we've seen in the previous season. But
also, I don't think Annie has seen that. She hasn't seen him kill anyone.
And he hasn't possibly told her.
Right. So maybe, that'll come out eventually. We'll find out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And maybe they can help one another with that.
You never know.
You never know. Just stay tuned. But I thought it was very interesting, these two. It's kind of weird that this accidental death actually brings these two to at least some sort of common ground. Like I said, some sort of, let's see, more like a compromise, I guess, where they they kind of a detente, if you will.
Well, she's kind of almost earned her boy's cred in the eyes of
Yes,
Butcher.
the street cred. Yeah, the street cred. Yeah, exactly. And not just because of the death, but the way that she's processing the death and handling it.
Yeah, because had she maybe gone, fallen to her knees and cried, Butcher probably would have not given her the time of day. But the fact that she processes it the way she does in the car and everything else, I think,
It's almost like she earns a little bit of his respect.
Yeah. And in fact, she actually calls him on it, saying, don't look at me like that with kind of awe and respect. I don't want that look.
Yeah. But he's still giving it anyway.
Yeah.
I guess. So it's kind of a mutual understanding that they reach here. And we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, because you could certainly turn the tables on how Butcher views soups, that not all soups are bad.
But now it's also a question of, well, how does this accidental death, this accidental murder...
What are the ramifications?
How does it affect Annie going forward?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And we'll see what happens. All right. So anyway, I just thought that was something we should really focus on for a little bit.
It was.
All right, topic number 4. Let's talk about... You guessed it, Homelander. Wouldn't be a boys' discussion without Homelander.
Of course.
And this season's certainly not one without Stormfront.
Yeah.
So our two crazy kids, after hooking up in the previous episode, well, our literal power couple decided kind of, they're kind of in the throes of whatever it is that they're doing. I don't want to call it lust at this point, perhaps.
Maybe it's love for Homelander and maybe not so much for Stormfront, but we'll get into it.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out. But so they go do what, a superpowered couple does. They go fight crime, right? So they catch a robber initially as the episode begins, and they kind of flirt with one another while they're debating about what to do about this bad guy.
Yeah, she's happily groping him, let's be honest.
Yeah, that's pretty much. She's feeling him up, stroking his genitalia through his pants. And Homelander, understandably, getting quite aroused by this. And apparently to the point where, as he climaxes, Homelander crushes the robber's head. Yes. And so blood sprays all over him. Again, remember, this is the boys. So, comes with the territory, right?
Of course.
So, blood is spraying all over them. And, obviously in a direct metaphor for what just happened.
Of course. And
they just continue to make out and Stormfront gets really turned on by this to the point where they start having sex in an alleyway. In the same alleyway.
Well, I guess
still covered in blood.
Well, I guess the old adage of sex and violence probably here is is suitable.
Yeah. So obviously things are going famously with these two right now. They're just fabulous, right?
At this point. What a couple.
Yeah. I'm sure it'll turn out well.
Of course.
Right? No big deal, right? So later, though, while Stormfront is off at the facility, as we were talking about, while it was under siege, Sage Grove, and she kind of helps to kind of take out some of the unruly patients that start escaping. Mm. While this is going on, Homelander kind of feels a little abandoned.
Well, because she kind of blows him off, because he's like,
right.
I've got something to show you in my trailer, and she probably, she reads it as, I want to have sex with you again in the trailer kind of thing. I think that's the way she reads it. Yeah. She says, I have a surprise for you. And she's like, you can surprise me all over the place when I get back kind of thing. So it's like, oh, okay.
It's nothing that can't wait till later, right?
Yeah, because she's thinking it's just another rough and tumble in the trailer, if you will.
Oh, when the trailers are rocking, don't come a knocking.
Well said.
There you go. Sounds like a country song, right?
It does.
All right. So Homelander, not really dealing with this well, burns down his trailer in anger.
Well, not to mention, he actually had a whole bouquet of roses set up.
Yeah. Yeah, so he was just trying to do this big, nice, romantic gesture for her.
Yeah, because like, thank you for a wonderful day, hugs and
Yeah,
kisses, Homelander. So it's like, wow.
yeah, something very lovey-dovey, something not so violent, bloody mess kind of way. And he feels rejected at this point. So because of his emotional immaturity, he lashes out angrily, burns down his trailer. So Stormfront finally shows up. Homelander accuses her of lying. Claims that, she claims that, I went to meet with my social team.
Yeah, in the
So
tower.
in the tower, so she lies to him about the facility. She's keeping that from him. And, Homelander says, I went to the tower, but you weren't there. So he gets more and more annoyed with her to the point where he starts choking her, but then he stops himself.
Yeah.
So things not going that well at this point.
And you almost see a concerned look on Stormfront's face, is like, am I in too deep, or should I say, am I in over my head with this
Right.
relationship, if we can call it a relationship?
Yeah, so what was this rather sudden relationships kind of hits the rocks pretty quickly. They hook back up later at the very end of the episode when Stormfront joins Homelander in her apartment. And he's refusing to hear her apology at this point. Says, I'll tell you everything from now on, and shows him a photo of her and an elderly woman that she says is her daughter, Chloe, who apparently died of Alzheimer's a few years ago.
Yeah.
And this is where we get the much-needed backstory here that in confirmation of what we all suspected, right? That she was born in 1919 in Berlin. This would be like roughly at the end of World War
War I. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would make her over 100 years old.
Pretty much. And she was with Himmler and Goebbels. So there's a good crew to hang out with.
That's fun people.
Exactly. Party, right? And she apparently met Frederick Vaught, who married her and gave her the very first successful compound V injection. They fell in love. Frederick gave her a daughter. And apparently his genius was what later made Homelander.
Right. And then she espouses on the whole thing of Homelander being their savior. And is it any surprise that Homelander is blonde and blue-eyed? It's the Aryan Superman.
Yes, exactly. So apparently she's all in on Homelander. All this, if you she doesn't come out and say it, but you kind of piece it together that she was riding him to put him in a situation where she can manipulate him and bring him into her confidence.
Yeah.
So Homelander's not sure about this, but Stormfront says, we're in a war for the culture. This is where she gets her full racist on here. Yeah. She says the other races are grinding them down, but they can attack or fight back with an army of soups. Yeah. So that's apparently her plan.
Yeah.
Is to start this super powered race war. Because race war isn't enough, right? We got to add superpowers to it.
Well, I mean, that also, of course, plays into the whole National Socialism narrative of the Übermenschen, or the Supermen, if you will.
Yes, exactly. So Stormfront tells Homelander that he could lead them, and he's everything that they've dreamed of. Like you said, he's the Aryan archetype, right? It's everything, the blonde hair, blue-eyed, exactly, what they want.
The Superman.
Their ideal. Yeah, exactly. The Übermensch, right. So this is why she says she's in love with him. And now neither of them have to be alone ever again. And they reconcile at this.
Yes. Which I was so hoping that he would actually break her neck at that point. I was actually going, do it. Kill this hussy. Seriously, do it now. One of the first a few times.
I'm guessing there was stronger language involved when you said that.
Yes, as I said, I'm down. I'm watering it down big time because this is
There
not
you
drunk
go.
cinema, so I can't.
No.
Can't let loose. But I was like, kill her already. I was just hoping for his eyes to suddenly light up and blast her head off, but. No.
But remember, we still got 2 more episodes to go, so we can't kill her yet.
Well, not to mention, she mentioned Goebbels, who was, of course, the head of propaganda for the National Socialist Party, and so a smooth talker and a silver-tongued devil. And she is just as silver-tongued because she plays into his ego. I think as soon as she says, "You were born to lead us," she's playing his song. She literally took a nickel, popped it in the jukebox, and is playing his song.
Well, like I've talked about, she's a master manipulator, and obviously she learned a few things from old Herman.
Exactly, hanging out with the head of propaganda. Yes, I guess it rubbed off on her.
Yeah, go figure, right?
Yeah.
So talk about a social influencer. Yeesh.
Yes.
More like a Nazi social influencer, but there you go. So that's where we kind of leave off the episode. Although we do get a little postscript where we find out that Stormfront had tried to kill Cindy earlier in the episode by electrocuting her, only she survived.
That's right.
And we see her hitchhiking along the highway. So presumably we will see Cindy again.
Yes, that spells trouble.
Right? I'm sure that'll go well.
Oh, of course, it'll go swimmingly.
Exactly. Right. So, all right. Anything else about this episode that we overlooked?
The other thing that I thought was interesting was seeing, of course, the Deep hook up with A-Train, and we see that they still have somewhat of a brotherly bond because, like, hey, brother, how you doing? Kind of hugging each other. And
I think it's more of a one-sided, though. I think the Deep wants to hang out with A-Train.
Yeah.
But A-Train doesn't really want to hang out with the Deep.
I suppose so. And then of course, he's like, do you want a Fresca? And as you told me, I've never tasted Fresca. And
Fresca, yeah.
And I suppose if somebody offers you Fresca, I don't know whether it's good news or bad news. But he's like, do you want Fresca? And so off they go to the Church of the Collective.
Side note, apparently Zan Sprouse likes Fresca.
Oh, good to know.
Yep. So just putting that out there. So I'm okay with Fresca, but it's not exactly my favorite. So I would rather drink, Sierra Mist, like I'm drinking right now.
There you go.
Or 7-Up or Sprite. So just putting that out there.
But yeah, so we get basically A-Train being taken to the Church of the Collective and meeting up, I think, with the head honcho of the head of the Church of the Collective at this very fancy dinner.
We get introduced to a certain Goran Viznik as Alistair Adana, the head of the church.
Yeah.
So and someone who may be a little more important as in the next couple episodes. We'll see. All right.
So that was interesting, yeah. And then, of course, the other thing I wanted to also mention was Maeve and her girlfriend. And then, of course, because they finally discovered they didn't find the black box from the plane, but they find, I think, the memory drive or the flash drive or whatever, or the footage from there.
Yeah, it was like a camcorder kind of thing that the Deep, because of the wreckage being underneath the ocean, presumably went to go down because of his ability, was able to swim down there, retrieve the camera.
Yeah, exactly. I talked to a few of my connections.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we see some
spoilers, they're fish.
Yes.
And I talked to some fish.
And we see some of this found footage. And we can see that could be very damaging, of course, for Homelander. And it doesn't seem to work well for Maeve's relationship either. No,
it doesn't, because apparently Elena, her lover, finds out about it. She's naturally, understandably horrified by this. But Maeve says, well, I've got some plans to blackmail Homelander so that he'll leave them alone, or else she'll go public with it.
Yes, like I'll give this to CNN if he doesn't leave us alone, or I
Yeah.
believe it's CNN. But yeah, but it's kind of left there because we don't know how things obviously are resolved between Elena and Maeve when it comes to this big reveal. But we know that the footage is there, which of course could
So
play a big role.
it's probably pretty important.
Yep.
So obviously it's another pawn on that chessboard to be played. So we'll see.
As we get to the last 2 episodes of this season. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. All right. So that's our episode. Do you have any favorite quotes?
Oh, well, I actually had one which really kind of stuck with me, which was actually Frenchie to MM, talking about the Latin happiness. It was like, the bachelor party, I will throw you. What's your stance about transgender strippers? And MM's like, strippers ain't really my kind of Hershey's, with or without nuts.
I had a feeling that as we went through our discussion that you were going to use that quote, so that's good.
Yes,
that was hilarious. That was pretty funny. And then Frenchie's always like hugging him, and just like, hey man, we're going to get that bachelor party. It's going to be great. And so
what about
very
you,
infectious.
Charles? Did you have any?
Let's see. Yeah, Starlight when she first comes into the kind of sanctuary, the safe house. And she's like looking around going, this is where you're living? Talking to Huey. And Huey's like, yeah, it has its charms. The rats are like Pokemon with Hep C.
That made me think of my friends who actually play Pokemon Go, believe it or not.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Zan's big into that, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're talking a lot about Zan this episode.
How probably her ears are burning at this point.
I hope she's now. I really hope she's listening.
You better be listening.
We're talking about yeah, exactly. Pressure's on. Butcher to Huey, I thought had a good line where he said, "Never go into shark-infested waters without chum."
That was a good one too. Yeah.
Do you have any others?
No, that was pretty much the one that stuck out with me the most, to be honest.
And then lastly, I'm going to say Starlight to Billy Butcher. Pretty interesting conversation here. She says, "The only good soup is a dead soup." And Butcher replies to that, "Your words, not mine." Knowing how, or what we all know, how Butcher feels about superheroes. So, yeah.
Ask Becca how he feels about superheroes.
Yeah, pretty much, right? All right. And music, we did get a couple of nice little musical moments. One disturbing when Homelander and Stormfront got it on to "Happy Together" by the Turtles.
Yes. And then also "Thank You for Being a Friend," I believe it was, at the end.
Yep, that was the Golden Girls theme.
Yes.
By the way, that was a nice touch, right? And then Orinoco Flow by Enya.
Which was very weird. I mean, I love Enya, but there was like, I'll never be able to listen to Enya again without thinking of the boys.
All right, so what's your rating for this one, sir?
I'm going to give this 8.5 exploding bodies.
Nice. Well, I'm going to go a little higher than you on this one. I love this episode. I thought it was a lot of fun. I give it 9 out of 10 love sausages.
That works, I reckon.
All right. So, Phantom Zone news, I just have one little thing to talk about. Just really quickly. Got some word that apparently Black Lightning will be ending with its upcoming 4th season. A little sad about that.
Yeah, so am I.
Really enjoy that show. Apparently, it's going to get replaced, though, by a Painkiller spinoff. The spinoff that nobody wants.
Seriously.
That's the plan.
Wow, really?
Yeah, exactly, right? So, yeah, that kind of deserves this as far as I'm concerned. So.
Yeah, epic fail on their part. Yeah. I'm sorry.
No offense if you're, no offense to anyone if you're a Painkiller fan.
Of course.
Cool character, but of all the DC superhero shows I want to see, Painkiller would not be high up on the list.
I mean, really, Greg Berlanti, you can do better.
Yeah, pretty much. Unless I'm kind of wondering, I've been thinking about this a little bit, and I've been kind of wondering, I want to get your thought maybe on this.
Yeah.
I think all the quote-unquote good superheroes are now being saved for HBO Max.
Aha, yes.
And Berlanti is only getting the leftovers, shall we say.
It's
Either
true. They're kind of eating
you know,
his lunch. That's true.
I mean, they are. I mean, to be fair, they are getting Superman and Lois.
Yep.
But with rumors that this may be the Flash's final season,
Everything's moving over.
Everything's kind of everything's shifting away. Things are changing.
Yeah, because we have
Supergirl,
Green
Supergirl
Lantern
got replaced.
coming up.
Right. So I'm just kind of, I kind of wonder what notable superhero shows are going to be added to CW at this point. I think anything that's really anything that anybody's really looking forward to is probably going to be appearing on HBO Max instead.
Yeah, it makes you wonder where Greg Berlanti is going to go from here on out, because it's almost like scraping the barrel at this point. Greg, move your head literally to find something interesting. They are going
to have Stargirl, which they picked up from DC Universe. Which is a
fantastic show. It's a fantastic show.
And that's a great show. We talked about it, here on the Fandom Zone when Jesse Jackson was my co-host talking about that. So no problems with that. It's a great show.
But it makes you think, where does Mr. Berlanti and his team go from here with the transition from the CW to HBO?
But again, that was a cast-off from DC Universe. Mm-hmm. So the question is, what new big exciting thing is the CW going to add at this point?
I mean, unless Painkiller is an overnight sensation.
It could be. It could be, to be fair. I mean, it could be popular, but I
coming off
think
Black
that
Lightning, it's quite
judging by the Twitter reaction I saw when the news broke, I don't think it's going to be anything anybody's really looking forward to.
I have feeling, as I said, but maybe also coming in from it, just not even maybe watching it. Folks might even almost refuse to watch it because they might be scorched by having lost Black Lightning.
Right. They might be pissed off, essentially. Yeah. Exactly. So just thought that was interesting. Do you have anything else news-wise you want to add?
Well, Charles, I don't know if we mentioned this, but what about, because I heard that, in the movieverse, Wonder Woman coming to TV screens on Christmas Day, if I am not wrong, or Christmas Eve.
Is true. Yeah, this was a nice little Christmas present we got from Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
Was the announcement that, hey, just like, Mulan appearing on Disney Plus, Wonder Woman is going to be brought to HBO Max, their streaming service. And even better than Mulan, it's not going to be
a premium pay-to-play.
It's not going to have an additional charge on top of the amount of money you're already paying for the service. Like it should have been. Like it should have been for Mulan.
I agree. I'm actually going to watch it on Disney Plus next month because it'll be free for Disney Plus folks. Yeah. But yes, you guys get Wonder Woman 1984 next month.
And they are going to be releasing it in theaters, although I don't know what theaters are going to be open, considering how our COVID rates are skyrocketing out of control.
Very true.
So,
well, I know what you'll be watching on Christmas Day, Charles.
Exactly. So, and by the way, my wife Lori and I have already made our plans because we'll be spending the day with my parents. Mm-hmm. But in order to watch the movie without like a billion questions from my parents, so that we can actually hear the movie, we're going to be We're not telling my parents that it exists, and we're going to go home and watch it on our TV later that night.
Yeah.
So we can actually enjoy it.
Well, I mean, I'm so looking forward to this, and it's
no offense to my parents, but
no, but I mean, come on, it's Gal Gadot and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean,
and then later, after we've watched it once at least, we'll let I'll have it on for my parents and let them watch it.
Well, there you go, exactly. Yeah, so I think that's some pretty cool news. Is you get Christmas with Wonder Woman, and so it's definitely
that's not too bad, right?
Oh no, it's nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah. Like I said, it was a wonderful Christmas present from Warner Brothers. So
Yes, I like that play on words there, Charles.
it was a wonderful Christmas time gift. Yep. All right. So do have some fan mail from Dave Proctor.
Yay!
I want to read that real quick. Dave, thank you so much for writing in. We really appreciate it. So he writes in about the bloody Dolzolf. Says, digging out Starlight's tracker was disturbing. How did they get it in there? It's a good question.
True.
Maybe, well, I mean, I would think she was probably aware of it, right? Unless they knocked her out. But...
I suppose. Not to mention the medical staff when they took it out was worse than the ones in Inglourious Bastards. Because there's like no sanitation whatsoever. It's like,
yeah,
out.
Right? It's out. Homelander and Stormfront going after a criminal and handling it in the most disgusting way. These two need to be put down. Ooh, rather harsh judgment from Dave there.
I kind of agree with Dave, I have to admit.
Put him down like a dog. All right. Starlight called Butcher on his bigotry. So often people don't see their own bigotry.
Very true.
Yep, that's true. Lamplighter. Frenchie really wants that guy. But now all the patients are out. Mayhem erupts. Yes, it does. Mm-hmm. Yes, it did. Except when you don't need it, Starlight's batteries go dead. Yeah, I guess she needed an energizer, I guess.
Yes, the back Butcher even caused, that's such a crappy power.
Right. The Deep tries to recruit A-Train. Tesla, no, Alistair Adana. I see what you did there, Dave, because Goran Viznik, who played Alistair Adana, also played Nikola Tesla in the Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror, the episode of Doctor Who.
Yeah.
I was trying to remember the exact episode title there. Get it there in a minute. A little slow tonight. That's all right. By the way, happy 57th anniversary, Doctor Who.
Yes, indeedy.
So, but we'll save that for another podcast. This is the Phantom Zone podcast. Although I am wearing a Doctor Who T-shirt today,
and it's a beautiful T-shirt that our dear friend Charles is sporting there. Very nice.
It's the Who's.
Yeah, exactly. It's the Who. Yeah, exactly.
Because you got like Paul McGann as Roger Daltrey. You've got Tom Baker as Pete Townsend. You've got David Tennant as Pete Best. And I think you got over here, you got Matt Smith as John Entwistle.
Yeah, so. It's a beautiful T-shirt.
There you go. All right.
Yes, happy birthday, Doctor Who, for sure.
Yep, happy birthday, Doctor Who. All right, and Dave continues. The head of the church is eager to have another recruit. Have some Kool-Aid. Yep. Or Fresca. Maybe it's Kool-Aid flavored Fresca. I don't know. Yeah. All right. We get a little peek into the history of Lamplighter and Butcher. I think he probably means Lamplighter and Frenchie, I'm guessing. But it's all right. Starlight is having a difficult time realizing that good people sometimes have to do bad things.
True. I just hope I don't have to kill anybody in this lifetime.
Yeah, I'm not planning on it personally. So anyway, although, obviously you get tempted, but no, you're not going to do that. All right. It's not good. Got to be the hero, not the villain, guys.
Amen.
All right. I love it. I laughed at this. He says, prehensile penis, question mark, exclamation mark, question mark, exclamation mark.
Prehensile penis.
Yeah, prehensile penis. Yep. Very alliterative of you, Dave.
Very clever.
Yep. Starlighter and Butcher finding common ground. That's one of the things I pointed out. Mm-hmm. Lamplighter has remorse and may be a bit suicidal. It's a good question. It's a good observation, I think. True. That's fair. And lastly, he says, so Stormfront comes clean to Homelander, and they start making out to the Golden Girls theme. Is this because she is older than dirt?
Yeah, she is over 100 years old.
They are. Yeah, she is. But it's also a nice callback to Frenchie.
Of course, the little Tarantino chat about the Golden Girls, of course.
Yeah, so he closes, keep up the good work, fellas. Stay well. So thank you, Dave.
Thank you very much, Dave, and I hope you and yours have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Exactly, and I second that emotion, sir. So, yes. Hope you and your loved ones are well, and hopefully you have a even better 2021.
Yes, indeed.
So if you want to be like Dave, and please do, write to us at Phantom Zone Cast on Twitter, Phantom Zone Cast on Facebook, Instagram at Phantom Zone Podcast. We would love to hear from you. Please like and follow us. Share the links if possible, because obviously we'd love to grow our podcast and get more listeners and more people contributing to the discussion.
And hey, sharing is caring, right, Charles?
Exactly. I love what you did that. All right. I love that you did that. So, Nick, where can they find you and all of your wonderful work?
Well, when it comes to me, first off, I'd like to say we've heard from Dave Proctor. I want to hear from Gamble at some point.
Ooh.
Da-da-da.
Really?
Yeah. We heard from Proctor. Where's Gamble? You know?
I see what you did there. Procter & Gamble. Very good. Very good.
That said, when it comes to me,
I'm sure he gets that joke all the time.
I know. I'm sorry, Dave. I didn't want to add to the because I'm sure you probably got it a lot. But yeah, when it comes to me, I do host a Whiskey and Cigarettes show where we play traditional country, today's country, and everything else in between. For more information about that and where you can tune into the show, you can visit our web. Also, podcast-wise, I do host the Happiness and Darkness podcast, where we discuss superhero movies from Marvel, DC, Dark Horse, Image, and more. If you'd like to join me to discuss your favorite superhero movie, you can email me at happinessanddarknesshow@gmail.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Also, I do co-host the Gold Standard, the Oscars podcast with Zan Sprouse and Rachel Friend. We're discussing all the movies from that won the Oscar for Best Picture from 1927's Wings to present day. If you'd like to join us to discuss your favorite Best Picture win, you can email us at goldstandardoscars@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook and Twitter. And what about you, Charles?
Well, as for me, of course, at Charles Skaggs on the Twitter machine, at Charles Skaggs on the Instagram, and Facebook, Charles Skaggs in Hilliard, Ohio, and my blog of geeky things.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn good coffee and hot, where I talk about all the stuff we talk about here on the Phantom Zone, including The Boys, Stargirl, Watchmen, all kinds of comic book sci-fi news. News of my other podcasts for the Southgate Media Group, including Deep Breath, where I talk Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast, where Jesse Jackson and assorted wonderful special guest companions join us, including a certain DJ Nick, this past week, where we talked Aliens of London, World War III from the Christopher Eccleston era. So you might want to check that out, listeners, if you haven't already. If you have, thank you for doing so. And in addition to Doctor Who, we also talked Torchwood, the Sarah Jane Adventures, Big Finish audios, and more. So I hope everybody checks that out. And once again, hey, happy 57th I'm jumping ahead of myself. Sorry. I was in the future 18 years down the road. It was a good year. Trust
Was
me,
that a good
me.
anniversary, the 75th, Charles?
The 75th anniversary was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. All right. And then also Ghost with the Twin Peaks podcast they do with Zan Sprouse, where we talk all things Twin Peaks, David Lynch, et cetera, et cetera. And right now, we didn't get an episode out this past week because, sadly, Zan was feeling under the weather. So we did not get our Criterion rundown of the Criterion collection of The Elephant Man as we had planned. So hopefully we'll be doing that here shortly. So thanks for your patience. And then we'll have to figure out what to talk about after that. So we'll see what happens. But any suggestions, drop us a line about what you'd like us to talk about on Ghost with the Twin Peaks podcast. And then Titan Talk, the Titans podcast, which is kind of on hiatus right now as we wait for Titan Season 3 and Doom Patrol Season 3. We did get the reveal of Starfire's costume today.
Indeed, we did. And Charles, I'd actually also like to take this moment, having the honor and pleasure of being a Titan talker, and I want to thank everybody for just liking the Facebook page because it's enjoying so much love of late. And I want to send a big thank you out to everybody who's supporting the Titan Talks podcast on Facebook. It means a lot to, I'm sure, to me, and I'm sure as much as it does to Charles and Jesse. So thank you for this influx of likes when it comes to Titan Talk.
It seems to be a very interesting global phenomenon, isn't it?
Indeed. I've just been watching it. I'm like doing my stuff on Facebook. I'm like, Time Talk got another 20 likes. I'm like, wow, they really like it over there.
It's pretty good. So yeah, we definitely appreciate it. So if you listen to us on Titan Talk, in addition to the Phantom Zone podcast, we really appreciate you and all the likes and support because we're almost heading toward 300 likes on Facebook, if I recall correctly.
Yes, and we're very, very grateful.
Which is pretty impressive as far as I'm concerned. All right. You guys are awesome for doing that.
Yes, indeed.
And then lastly, I want to mention Drunk Cinema, the unexpurgated podcast that I do with Zan Sprouse, where it's pretty simple, really. We watch movies together as a kind of commentary style fashion, and we drink adult beverages and have adult language and discussions. And if you've listened to our very first episode where we watched Batman 1989, you know that was a pretty interesting discussion that we had.
It was.
As Zan got a little too carried away. A little bit.
She wasn't drinking Fresca.
She was not drinking Fresca, exactly. That was a very special Fresca on that one. But it made for a great podcast, trust me. I hope everybody that listened to it enjoyed it. We're just a brand new podcast, so everybody would definitely appreciate it if you liked and follow us on the social media and also shared our links and encourage your friends to check us out. We definitely appreciate it. And coming up in episode 2, we'll be discussing Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which is it's one of my all-time favorite movies. Zan, if you've heard us on Ghostwood, we kind of do the Ferris lines a lot.
Yes.
A lot of references. So this is kind of one near and dear to our hearts. So we're starting off pretty strong. We did Batman 1989, then Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and we've got a nice little list here that I'm holding, top secret list. Of things that we're going to be coming up with planned for the near future. So I hope everybody checks it out. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Great fun. Folks, definitely check out, if I may, folks, definitely check out Drunk Cinema because Charles and Zan just provide with so much entertainment. I thought it was hilarious, to be honest. When I was actually doing my shopping, Charles, I was listening to you guys, and I was kind of almost laughing when I was getting some folks like, do you have a condition, son? Are you okay? 'Cause I was laughing while doing stuff, but yeah. There I was. But yeah, it's hilarious.
Well, that's the point. We were trying to just entertain people and have fun and hopefully make you laugh. So if we did that, we did our jobs.
And the world needs a laugh in this day and age, unfortunately.
Pretty much, especially right now. So it's nice to know that our drinking was not in vain. All right. So I hope everybody checks out us on Drunk Cinema. Next time on the Fandom Zone, though, episode 197, we're going to be talking Butcher, Baker, Candlestick Maker. And in this one, Congresswoman, Victoria Newman, schedules a hearing against Vought with Lamplighter as the chief witness.
Ooh.
And I'm sure that'll go well.
Of course. It's the boys. How can it not?
Yep. Homelander and Stormfront manipulate Ryan, and Maeve and Elena break up over that rather awkward videotape. So we'll see how that plays out. Plus, much, much more.
Oh, yes.
Nick, I want to thank you especially tonight because you were kind enough. We were having, shall we say, Charles was having some technical difficulties in forgetting to start the record button as we got about maybe a third into the podcast. So, Nick, I want to thank you so much and publicly thank you for agreeing to restart the episode and get us all hopefully recorded as long as MP3 Skype recorder doesn't screw me over tonight.
Well, Charles, it was a pleasure. Heck, I saw that as a dress rehearsal. You know, we're kind of like rehearsing. It's like, okay, we're good to go. Start shooting. So it was all good. And it's such a joy as always to podcast with you. You know, I suppose even though, as I mentioned, we don't celebrate Thanksgiving over here, the spirit of Thanksgiving has permeated me as well. And so I'm super thankful to you for having me, on and joining you in this great discussion. And a big, big thank you to our listeners out there for supporting us. It means the world. So just thank you all so very much. And of course, Charles, thanks again for, thinking of me and having me join you.
Well, I certainly can't add anything more than that because you pretty much summed it up perfectly. Yeah, I hope you're more than welcome to share our Thanksgiving, however virtually it may be. But we consider you one of our family, so at least know that we want to share our thanks to you as well. And we have to hope that the year coming up will be a much better year for all of us.
Here's hoping for sure. Yeah, stay safe out there, folks.
Yeah, be thankful for our health. Be thankful for our safety. And in the meantime, though, then come on back for episode 197 as Nick returns with me to talk Butcher, Baker, Candlestick Maker. I think it's going to be a lot of fun as we hit the penultimate episode of The Boys Season 2 as we're building to that very special climax, only without a love sausage. Just keep that out of your mind. And then we'll see you next time right here on the Phantom Zone podcast. Goodbye, everybody.
Ciao.